Have you ever looked at a miniature and thought, wow, that looks like it crawled straight out of a swamp, and now it's freaking mad at you? Today I'll show you exactly how to paint this dragon, Strakh Nightmare Incarnate, like a true master. Showing you in detail every single step in the process to take you from an absolute beginner all the way to a freaking master. Grab your dragon and a paintbrush and let's get started. Today we're painting Strakh, a big badass dragon with wings the size of a small town. And we're going all in on mood, atmosphere, and slightly gross skin textures that just screams, don't touch me, I'm freaking ancient. And the beautiful thing with this paint job is that all of the paints I will be using in this entire video can all be found in what, Emil?
Squidmar paint sets!
Exactly! Our 4 amazing paint sets that we've released alongside Vallejo. So if you got those and the dragon, you can follow along each and every step of this entire video. And if you don't have them, grab them in the link in the video description. But now, let's get started with the painting.
Chapter 1. Base.
For the base, you're gonna have to bring out the following paints. Black, Cayman green, sunny skin tone, deck tan, sepia ink, magenta ink, and black ink. For this paint job, I really want to start with the base. The idea with the dragon is to make it look like it's pale, with pink, reddish tones going through all of the skin, and to create a nice contrast with that dragon skin, we're gonna go with a slightly more desaturated, ominous looking green base. Alongside with some really cool tonal variations in the rocks of the base to really make it super freaking fly. What we'll do first is mix some Cayman green and black about 50-50 and then add this as a base coat with the airbrush. In this step I apply it sort of like a super generous zenithal highlight. Next up, we'll add a pure Cayman green through the airbrush. I mix about 50% thinner with paint to get a smooth application, reducing any unwanted texture. In this step, we'll start directing the light more, focusing on the top half of each one of the rocks on the base. And the idea is to have the light be super dramatic and enhance the ambience a lot. And having it brighter at the top and the front and darker on the back and shadows really helps create that look. Now we can mix deck tan and Cayman green and add it to the exact same areas, but make the highlights slightly smaller, focusing on just the very most raised areas to make the rocks pop even more. We're now gonna let the airbrush rest for a while, and we're gonna bring out maybe the best tool in a miniature painter's arsenal, the sponge. If you've seen a rock before, you know that they rarely are just a super smooth surface. Rather, they're built up with different textures and imperfections. Using a sponge, we can perfectly simulate this with very little effort. And the best thing is, it's also incredibly fast. Because we didn't spray a fully covering layer through the airbrush, the first step will be to use the same mixture of Cayman green and deck tan as before. We can add some sunny skin tone to the same mix, but just dilute it a little bit more by dabbing the sponge in some water or on your wet palette. Then start adding this texture to pretty much all over the base. And don't worry if this looks a little bit weird in the shadows. We have plenty more steps that will cover up this and smoothen it out later. And one thing to keep in mind is to not press too hard with the sponge, or you'll just end up getting one big chunk of paint in one super concentrated area. We're instead looking to get these random speckles and imperfections throughout on the base. The beauty of sponging is that it's a very organic process. So once we feel satisfied with this color, we can add some sunny skin tone to the same mix. And it doesn't have to be perfect or a brand new clean sponge. Use the same one from before, adding this to a slightly smaller surface. Now mainly focusing on the top half of each rock. To finish the highlight part of the base, it's now time to bring out the brush. The first thing we'll do is to add an edge highlight of Cayman Green, Deck Tan and Sunny Skin Tone to the patterns in the big monolith, making sure to only place the highlight on the edge angled towards the sky.
Hold up, got a good feeling, can't sleep, my heart is beating faster than usual, thrill in the city lights, break free, gotta make a run, cause the night is way too young, it's only begun, just let all your problems go.
Now to make the roots feel more separated from the rocks without being too separated from everything, we're gonna bring out Dark Rust, Deck Tan and Sunny Skin Tone, beginning by covering every single little root and branch on the base using Dark Rust. Here you can intentionally let the Dark Rust bleed over onto the rocks a tiny bit, because once highlighted, this little bleed will act as a separating line, separating the branches from the rock. To bring out the textures of this wood and add highlights, we now mix Dark Rust and Deck Tan about 40 to 60 and start adding these wood bark patterns on all of the branches and roots, adding lines going along the shape of the stem and some dots and imperfections here and there. And as you can see here, it doesn't have to be perfect, because when you get started with painting this, it might seem impossible. To help me along the way, I use a Kolinsky Sable paintbrush to keep the tip of the brush super fine. I make sure that the brush is moist, load it properly with paint, and only use the tip of the brush, pulling it towards myself. But now to add the same punch and intensity in the highlights as on the rocks, we add some Sunny Skin Tone to the mix and add on the branches facing the front. Here we try to highlight the areas of the branches pointing up and are angled up towards the sky. Don't worry if all of this looks a bit rough in this stage, as we're gonna fix it just like in the shadows of the rocks later. Now that we've painted pretty much all of the textures and highlighted all of the areas, it's once again time to bring out the airbrush for one magical final step. This time we're gonna add inks in the shadows to create the moody effect and really make this come together nicely. In this step, it's important to add the inks in the correct order to achieve the desired effect. First out, we'll add some violet ink in all of the deep shadows, making sure to be super gentle on the trigger. Again, thin out about 50% and work slowly and take your time rather than rushing it and getting some ugly spider webbing or splatter. As you can see here on the back of the big monolith and underneath the smaller ones, I add quite a lot of ink to really sell this being a deep shadow. Once we feel satisfied with the violet ink, we can bring out the sepia ink and add on top of the violet one and also in all of the areas where we want a less intense shadow. So on the sides of the big monolith, I add quite a lot of the sepia ink. The same goes for the parts that are further down on the base. Now working with inks, you can get a somewhat different finish to all of the areas on your miniature, making the areas you've added the ink to look more glossy than satin like the rest of the mini. So for a piece like this, to bring everything together, I like to bring out some matte varnish and add it in the shadows to really tie everything together and have one cohesive finish. As a final detail to the monolith, we're going to add something to create an extra environment feel to this piece with the help of a pigment wash. You can easily create this by mixing dry pigments with some flow improver or airbrush thinner and top off with some water. A good consistency is a super liquidy substance that leaves some traces of pigment as you paint it over a flat surface. Next up, we'll add some coconut fiber to the rest of the areas on the base, and while I do, let me talk about this week's sponsor, this plate. If you're looking to level up your home, office or studio to be just as sexy as ours, this plate makes some of the coolest high quality metal posters that are super easy to hang up. and they look amazing. I mean, just look at this. As we're speaking, there are over 2 million designs in the Displate catalog. Discover new original art or choose from officially licensed designs from likes of Star Wars, Marvel, Elden Ring, and many other iconic brands and franchises. Mounting your Displates with a sticker leaf and a magnet takes just a couple of seconds. It's tools free, so there's no drilling, no holes, and best of all, no frustration. And maybe best of all, you can swap them out anytime you want. Also, make sure to check out their brand new selected designs featuring the new Textra finish. These premium print finishes will be available without limitations in vast selection of pop culture metal posters. And now promotions are available for Textra products for the first time ever. Displate, they offer fast delivery, meaning that you will have your brand new design within 4 to 5 days after order. And for each and every single one of the Displate posters, one magnet is always included in the box. And right now, if you go to displate.com/Squidmar and enter the code Squidmar, you get some pretty sweet deals like these. 25% off when buying one Displate, 32% off if you grab 2 or 3 Displates, and if you go for 4 or more, boom! 37%. All of these discounts are valid on the Textra designs, however, not on limited editions or Lumino designs. With that said, let's get back into painting some Strakh! Now that we have the coconut fiber all in place and the glue is drier than Now, as a final thing, it's time to add some black ink, making this sort of vignetting on the edges of the base, as well as adding this in the deepest of deep shadows, making everything look really, really sexy. This step will act sort of as a filter, making sure to bring everything together even a bit more, and finishing everything off once again with a layer of ultra matte varnish. And if you look at this base, this is the reason we wanted to make the Squidmar Special Effects paint set. As in a matter of seconds, we can take this piece from somewhat flat to super deep and dynamic, simply by using inks through the airbrush, shooting them in the shadows. Now that the ground beneath Strakh is telling its own eerie tale, it's time to focus on what you're really here for, painting the dragon. So let's hop on
Chapter 2. Skin.
And the paints you'll need in these steps are Cayman green, dark rust, burnt red, skin tone, ivory, red ink, dark turquoise ink, gory red, fluo orange, and white. We're gonna start off by creating a strong base quickly. And as you've seen throughout this video, the usage of airbrushes and sponges really help leveling up that speed and also getting that professional looking result. So moving on to the skin of the dragon, no exception here, bring out the airbrush. We start by mixing dark rust, Cayman green, and burnt red, about a third each, with 50% flow improver to get a consistency that looks something like this. Working our way around the dragon, we can now cover pretty much all of the parts with this mixture, making sure to only shoot this from slightly above, meaning that some of the areas that are angled downwards will only get a super small amount of color spill onto it, making those areas quite a lot darker than the areas angled upwards. Now, to understand how we're gonna paint the highlights on the skin, we need to break it down into two things: texture and light placement. When we place our highlights on this big monster, we have to understand the basic shapes and how light will interact with them. So if you look here on this mini, here you can clearly see that some areas are quite a lot darker, whereas some are really bright. Where most areas angle upwards have somewhat of the same brightness. There's also some of the local areas that are hit with even more light, such as these skin textures at the top of the back. And if we then look at the bottom of each muscle, even the ones on the top of his back, it's slightly darker than on the top, while still blending together with the other surfaces. In order for us to make this as good as possible, we'll have to keep all of this in mind. But there's another thing that affects how the end result of the miniature looks just as much, and that is how we texture it. When it comes to the texture of the dragon, we can see that there are these small grooves and patterns in the skin. All of these we will want to make the most out of without having to spend way too much time. To fully explain what I mean, let me show you. I'm going to build up the highlights and textures, starting off with a 60-20-20 mix of burnt red, skin tone and cayman green. Shooting this on about 60% of the miniature in all of the areas facing up. Moving on, we can bring out the brush and start introducing textures to the skin by mixing burnt red and skin tone about 80-20. And as you can see here, I like to move the brush rather fast and just add these textures, making sure that I hit the correct spots without thinking too much, meaning all of the textures on the meanie angled towards the sky. And I pretty much cover all of the parts that we previously added the highlight using the airbrush, only leaving the parts that are truly angled downwards and in shadow. And using these random, not over-planned strokes, usually this ensures that you get more natural looking skin textures as opposed to when you overthink every single step of the process. And don't worry if you accidentally add this highlight in the shadows, because we'll cover that later with the airbrush and fix any mistakes. Now moving on from this step, there's nothing too weird going on. We're now just going to increase our contrast in our highlights, going brighter and brighter, keeping the same volumetric approach in mind but adding it to a smaller and smaller surface for each passing. Just slowly adding more and more skin tone to the mixture as we go along. And also, as you see in this step, I focus mainly on the neck and face of the dragon, the shoulders and back, maybe not as much going further and further out from the center of the meanie. But then again, to contradict myself, I'm spending a bit more time on the hands and claws and the tip of the tail.
I feel like Kobe 24, you know I had to ice my wrist. I've been ballin' since a young, you know I had to stack my chips. Bending corners, 12 personas, know we had to take them risks. You want a spot and take a shot, don't give a fuck about no miss. We in the field, but I'm in the end zone, no I can't lie. Good as a friend, but she and her friends go look at the score. I'm sorry, little brother, you know you can't win. Like a knockout. I punch like take when I aim at his chin. So we in the back of the back, last name Dripper, so you know I get drippy. You ain't on my side, ain't on my team. Yeah, I'm running the city. Don't gotta ask if it's with me. Yeah, I play the block like a Wimby. I shoot till it's empty, sticks in the back of the Bentley. Look, I feel like Kobe 24, you know I had to ice my wrist. I've been ballin' since a young, you know I had to stack my chips. Bending corners, 12 personas, know we had to take them risks. You want a spot and take a shot, don't give a fuck about no miss. I feel like Kobe 24, you know I had to ice my wrist. I've been ballin' since a young, you know I had to stack my chips. Bending corners, 12 personas, know we had to take them risks. You want a spot and take a shot, don't give a fuck about no miss. You ain't on my team, just bag it up. Like, oh, they want smoke, we gon' pack them up. Just look at the score and the time is up. I'm on where you gon' lose, better bag it up.
Once we've reached a mixture that's about 70% skin tone, I have a little trick up my sleeve. In a similar way to what we did with the airbrush in the first step, to help create a more readable meanie that looks more moody, we can also highlight the rump of the dragon to a lesser extent than the front, even though it's higher up and closer to the light source than the face. This helps draw more focus towards the face and the front of the miniature. However, this is not just a way of adding less of the highlights to the back. Instead, what we can do is add the highlights on a smaller surface but at the same brightness as we do around the face area. When we've added a couple of layers, building up the skin tones, we've reached a point where we're only highlighting using the color skin tone, no burnt red whatsoever, and it should already start looking quite freaking amazing. But there are still some small tricks that we can do to make sure that Strakh looks better than your grandma. And the first one is to dilute some skin tone and add it to the airbrush. I use about 3 parts thinner to 1 part paint in this step. Now by barely shooting any paint we can sort of mist this from above on the brightest, most raised areas. This will help blend everything a bit and also soften any shadows that are a bit too strong. And as you can see here, I'm applying this super gently. In some areas the camera might not even pick up the subtleties. That's how careful we need to be in this step. Because if you're too harsh with the application using the airbrush in this step, you'll get speckles and you might get this effect where the shadows are starting to read as overexposed. At this stage the dragon looks pretty freaking amazing, but it does lack a little bit of that extra cool and some tonal variations. To really make it look as good as possible is to bring out some inks and shoot them in the shadows to add some more aliveness to our undead dragon. Makes total sense.
Big brain.
Big brain! Starting off with the red ink. The idea with this layer will be to add sections that look like they're blushing or is sorry. So by angling the airbrush from below, we can add this slow and steady to those areas. I like to add it around the fingers, on the elbows, a little bit on the neck, and pretty much any part that has skin stretched thin over a bony area. And now once the red ink is dry, we can move over to the dark turquoise ink. This color is really intense, which means that we'll have to dilute it a bit more than we would normally do. Now we can apply this super carefully. And you might actually not even see some of the areas I'm adding this blue ink to. But what this blue ink will actually do to the mini is make some areas look like they're almost translucent. Think of it almost as if you're looking at a naked rat in real life. Next up, we'll add some ivory to the finest of fine highlights. Adding this to the shoulder area, a bit of the neck and the elbows, and all of the parts I want to be little extra focal points. And as I'm applying this, you can see just how small the areas are that I'm painting it on. Now, the skin should look something like this. It's now time to paint the most interesting part of this mini, and that is the wings. And this is the part of the miniature that's truly gonna stand out and make all of your buddies lose their freaking jaws. My idea for the wings would be to recreate the effect of light showing through skin, where the wings are gory red on the top parts and almost glowing from the core, and then have it feel like skin has been ripped through at the bottom part of the red areas. Here you'll get this really intense fiery orange and the veins showing through, making the wings look really interesting. So the paints we'll need are gory red, fluorescent orange, white, evil red, violet red, burnt red, skin tone, light flesh, red ink, and dark turquoise ink. Now we can start off by covering the entire wing membranes with gory red. Next up, we grab our evil red and start painting these veins running across the membranes. I like to visualize the veins coming out of the arms and then shooting out like lightning as it spreads across the wings. And to get the perfect feel for the veins, I do the following. Make sure your brush is moist, then you grab some paint, making sure to stir it into the bristles and still have a nice tip. Now you can start making these lines whilst painting towards yourself. Allowing for a slight shake on the hand makes for natural looking imperfection. Now it's just a matter of making these all over the membranes. And if you need references, just look up lightning and you're all set. And people, don't overdo this step. This is one of those less is more situations. If you add too many, it will mess up everything and you will not get the correct illusion. So just the correct amount. Like we say in Swedish, lagom. And once we feel happy with all of the veins, it's time for the next step. But because we're gonna use the airbrush and we actually already finished some of the parts of the miniature, make sure to use the masking putty and mask off those parts so that you don't accidentally ruin them by shooting paint on them. Then we can dilute some white paint as much as possible and bring out the airbrush. Now we'll try to add a super thin zenithal highlight to the wings. In this step, I like to go over with several thin layers rather than trying to hit it all in a home run. Because remember, we want to keep those veins sort of visible under this film of white paint. Painting in layers like this will really sell the effect of the veins being in different depths of the wings, rather than just right under the skin. For each of these layers of white, I also push it closer and closer to the top part of the wings to get a nice gradient with darkest at the bottom and brightest at the top. Now once the white is dry, it's time to add a new layer of veins. This will be the exact same step as before, but this time we switch out the evil red for violet red and try to add this in areas where we didn't paint any veins in the first layer. Something that will add to the effect of depth is to make some of these lines cross over the first veins we painted. Now that the veins are dry, we can shoot some fluorescent orange over the entire thing using the airbrush. And this layer with fluorescent orange is really what sells the effect of the wings feeling like they're see-through and you have light shining from behind them. Don't overdo this step, because if you add too much of this fluorescent orange, it will start feeling artificial. Subtlety is really the key in making this look great.
Hit the scene and it's all green. On go, we ain't never doing small things. Being fitted for the crown, cause we all kings. If you know you got to shine, let them people know it's time for the show. Built to thrive, ain't just here for the ride. Don't know how I caught this stride, but since then it been live, I'm up early, cause I ain't missing the shot when I'm worthy. I've been chasing rings, they only want in the jersey, yeah. Slimmer than after the Benjamin versus unlimited. Blood in this ink, I've been hemorrhaging, take me to imaging. No, they can't match with their energy, that's why I'm finna be taking the game to new levels, just peep how I'm sending it. I put the music up first and competition come last. Repetitions beat them beyond recognition. We are eons ahead, wait till the price catch up. I always knew I'd win, it's how my life set up. Slim don't fold, probably bumping some old in the whip. Game sold from the people much older out here. Keep patience and your calling will reach you, but you probably prolong it if nobody can't teach you. But back to this greatness unfolding, I don't see nobody outpacing, I'm focused.
Now obviously we could leave it like this, but as I said in the beginning, I really want to make these skin-torn effects at the bottom of the wings. So let's bring out burnt red, skin tone, and let's get cracking. We begin by mixing burnt red and skin tone until we have the mid-tone we used on the skin. Then it's time to start painting the pattern. To make this effect, what I like to do is make a slightly curved line going from one end to the other. From this strand I can add more connecting strands going from it, making it look like it's really skin being stretched out and on the verge of being torn apart. What I also like to do is make them come tighter and make it smaller the further down / closer to the little finger things on the wings. Then space it more generously the further up I go. From here on you can go how nuts or not nuts you'd like to. You can make it look like most of the skin is left on there, or just a little bit like I'm making it today. Then to add the brightness to the sections we simply add more and more skin tone to the mix until we reach full skin tone. Just like we did when painting the skin of the dragon. By now, you guys should already know what the next secret tip is to this step. And that is, of course, to bring out dark turquoise ink once again. Shooting these in what, Steve? Yes, of course, the shadows, making sure that this skin feels connected with the rest of the miniature. However, in this step, you need to be a lot more careful than when you did the rest of the skin, because we don't want to overdo this and add it too much onto the orange, or it will start looking not as fiery as we want it. Okay guys, we now have painted the wings, the base and the skin of the dragons. That actually means that we have some important parts that are left untouched before we have a finished mini. So let's get on to
Chapter 4, Horns and Spikes.
And the paints you'll need for this step are the following: dark rust, deck tan, Japanese uniform and ivory. Sometimes painting horns and teeth can be a bit sucky. You don't know what kind of style and color you want it to be, and sometimes they might be in weird shapes or textures that you just feel like, hey, I don't know how to paint this. I'm looking at you, freaking vermin lords. Freaking most unpaintable horns I've ever painted. Well, luckily for us, this guy has some perfectly sculpted horns and teeth. And for the painting, we'll also try to make it as dumbed down and easy as humanly possible. Starting off by covering the entire areas with dark rust. When bringing out the highlights, we try to keep it as simple as possible, mixing dark rust, Japanese uniform and deck tan equal parts. Using this mixture, we can start building up the textures on the horns. If we look at the big horns on the head, I try to paint each segment of the horn, follow the general light of the entire piece, as if the horn would just be one solid thing rather than segments. But still making sure that we have some separation between the parts, but making the highlight feel as one single material that's connected. Then just defining each segment by adding an edge highlight going down here. In these segments, we also make sure to include some textures whilst we apply the highlight. A neat thing to think about is that most of the time, we'll look at the meanie from the front. So in order to further enhance the lighting, if we leave the innards angle side of the horn a bit darker, it will look really nice. It really helps create a nice separation and strong contrast, even if we're cheating with the rules of light. Moving on to the horns on the back and all of the claws. What we'll do here is to paint the highlight going from where it connects to the skin, then out to a taper towards the edge. Once we're done with the base coat of the Japanese uniform and deck tan mix, it's time to start adding some brighter highlights by adding ivory to the mix. I start off by adding about 50% ivory to the current mix, and add this as a highlight to all of the upwards angled areas, but leaving the top 50% of the horns with just the first highlight. I then add even more ivory to some select few areas, mainly focusing it around the facial area. This will ensure that we really draw the attention to the face of Strakh. But now once you have all the horns painted, it's time to move on to
Chapter 5. Mouth, neck and eyes.
And all of the paints you'll need for this are the following: black, gory red, light flesh, white, fluorescent orange, red ink and deck tan. Starting off with the mouth, I lay down some gory red on the tongue and the innards of the mouth. To highlight the tongue, we mix gory red and light flesh about 70-30 and start adding this highlight as a stippled texture. And as we go, we can add more and more light flesh until we reach something that's close to a 20-80 mix. Making sure that we add this only on a smaller and smaller surface for each passing.
I don't care if they say that I'm a bad girl, 'cause I gotta do, oh I gotta do, yeah what I feel like. Well I don't care if you think that I'm a bad girl. I just wanna do what I wanna do to feel my desires. I'm feeling like no, but I'm thinking like go. I know what I want, I see what I want, I just gotta do. I'm feeling like no, but I'm thinking like go. You know what you want, you see what you want, what you gonna do. Now. Come over here, I got something to show you.
And for the teeth, I follow the exact same steps as on the horns on the back. But however, the main secret to making teeth look as good as humanly possible is to only add the final highlight of ivory to the topmost part of the teeth. Not edge highlighting the bottom of the sharp part of the teeth, just adding a small dot up in the highest point of the tooth, closest to the gum and on the sharpest point of the teeth on the bottom jaw. Now to paint the eyes. We begin by painting the entire eye socket and eyelid using gory red. Then with a super steady hand we paint the eye itself with deck tan. When painting with the deck tan, this is supposed to be the eye itself. But to make it stand out and have clear separation, we want to leave a thin red line outlining the eye on the bottom and the top area of the eye. This will create the clear separation and nice readability of the eye. Once we've added the deck tan, we can add some white to the side that's closest to the light source, covering about 1/3 of the eye itself. Then we can paint a black circle that will build up the iris from. Keep in mind that the iris is rarely fully visible. It's oftentimes covered both at the top and bottom by the eyelid or by one of the eyelids. Otherwise, you will get the deer in headlights look. Because that's not a natural look. For a dragon, that's usually eating the deer that's stuck in headlights. Then we can add some deck tan in the center of this black circle, leaving a small black rim on the edges. Now to make this eye not just look like a grey thing, we bring out the fluorescent orange, adding this to only the iris. To finish off the eye, we can paint a black dot in the center to represent the pupil. And then the last and final thing we'll add to the eye is maybe the most important thing when painting eyes. I'm of course talking about this small little dot of white representing the reflection in the corner of the iris. I mean, just look here, zoom in editor. You can even see it in my eye, hopefully. I don't know.
You can.
Okay people, so Strakh is obviously a dragon. And what do dragons normally do? Yes, they breathe freaking fire. So I had this idea, and I obviously did not steal it from Stan V and Javi, and that is to paint Strakh having this like build-up of fire in the throat, as if he's just about to launch a nuclear attack of fire from his hole in mouth.
From his deep throat.
From his deep-throated throat. And I also thought that, hey, this will really tie together nicely with the fiery orange on the wings, creating almost like a triad of orange on the miniature, creating a really nice composition for the piece. So to create this effect, we begin by adding a white line in the center of the folds and where the muscles meet on the neck. Once that's done, we can add some white using the airbrush, just trying to shoot it at these white lines to allow for some small feathering from the line. We also shoot this white straight into the mouth of the dragon, trying to get as much of pure white in the back of the throat as possible. Now to make this sexy, let's shoot some fluorescent orange all over the white. Allowing it to leak onto the skin a little bit will make this really glow. Similarly to the wings, if you go too strong with the fluorescent paint, this might look really fake. Making a subtle spray will keep it looking as if it's showing through the skin, like it's loading up to spray the fire.
No stairs, I done elevated twofold with the hesitation. They faked, I went up and made it Cody. This gon' make a statement on him and ain't no debating. I see no signs of defeat while I'm on this road to greatness. Many that tried, I'm unshakable, they can't break me down. Still on location, on waiting, ain't gotta chase me down. When in the hit, ain't no safety, cause I can't play around. That's how I get, I was built for it. All ready for war. Locked and loaded, they know that I've been the call. Ready for war. This way to shoulder, they do never make me strong. All ready for war. Ready whenever, wherever, cause I'm a soul. Ready. Slim play for the keep, I ain't got a goal, I ain't finna reach everything. Golf range to the tee. I done worked hard, now for the free. 10 cent the spar, now I gotta eat, beat like a doze. I ain't got a key, still dropping flows like I got a hole in the ceiling. Stepping on them every week in the middle of January, bringing heat. Nah, I ain't finna sleep, and I had hard before I had a beat. Odds had to stay steep, turned to a goat from a black sheep. Writing notes in the back seat, burn holes in the black tea. Now I'm breaking molds with a big bowl, winning pat homes with the canned cheese. But they never can pass me. I'm the best if you ask me, and progress is the last me. It's a long way to the top, but the top won't wait till you drop, and it's all one way. Taking off to the runway, touchdown on a Sunday. Many that tried, I'm unshakable, they can't break me down.
Now to conclude this entire piece, say it with me, it's time to add some red ink through the airbrush, shooting this in the shadows of the neck, help blend this fiery orange a little bit more with the skin. And with that, I think it's finally time for a grand reveal. And there we have it, people! A painted Strakh that not only screams badass freaking dragon overlord, but also whispers, "Hey sexy, I might be your new profile picture on Instagram." If you like this masterclass and want more like it, make sure to smash the living shit out of the like button. Do you even want these types of videos? Head over to our website, get yourself the Strakh, get the paint set. We also have the Squidmar Evolution airbrush, and maybe, heck, even if you want to support us, join the cult of our Patreon and you will see behind the scenes footage of us. But with that said, a massive thanks to our Patreons. You guys are honestly the best. Without you guys we could never do any of this, especially these top donors. And also this week's sponsor, Displate. If you want to have good looking pictures on your walls, follow the link in the video description. With that said, have a great day. Bye bye!